Welcome to the Day 2 podcast. Today's episode, financial models haven't changed, but the mood around which financial metrics matters most certainly has. Friend of Day 2, Tyler Jefcoat, joins me today to unpack what's changed. I'm Jason Boyce, founder and CEO of Avenue 7 Media and host of the Day 2 podcast. Today's guest is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur who had a successful exit in 2017 and now helps e-commerce brand owners improve profitability, inventory performance, and most importantly, folks, cash flow. He's the best Amazon accountant and CFO around, and he's the founder and CEO of Seller Accountant. Of course, I'm talking about Tyler Jefcoat. Tyler, this is your second time on Day 2, so thanks for joining us again. How have you been?
Buddy, I'm doing great. Jason, thanks for having me today.
Let's kick this off, Tyler. To start with, let's be honest, 2020 and 2023 has been a slog. Probably historically, I think one of the most challenging periods that product brands, especially e-commerce, has seen ever. When we talked earlier, though, Tyler, you're such an optimist, and I love that about you. You were optimistic about 2024. Tell me more about what you're seeing, and more importantly, what your gut is telling you and what you're feeling.
Most owners like you and me, most CEOs, and by the way, you were in this game longer than I was, but for those of you guys listening who started your business when I started, like my first company, we launched in 2012. And what that means is that I had never for a day been in charge in anything other than a historical bull market. Interest rates were low and the sun shineth. And there was no strategy that worked beyond all gas, no brakes. Let's go, baby. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And so what's happened over the last couple of years is things got hard. And what's really cool about this, and I know this is like a weird optimism to have, but the brands that you're serving and that we're serving here at Seller Accountant had to learn how to manage their businesses. By the way, I had to learn how to manage my business. I'm a damn accountant. I don't feel great about this, but I had to learn how to manage a business because we had headwinds for the first time. And coming out of the back end of that, the transformations that I've seen in our clients where, okay, we're managing our portfolios. We have an eye on expenses. We understand how to measure return on investment instead of just shotgun, boom, 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 borrow, 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 borrow. We're having to actually execute. And because of that, baby, we are lean, mean fighting machines coming into 2024. And guess what, guys? The interest rates are going to normalize and come back down a little bit. They're probably not going back to zero, but they're going to normalize.
From your mouth to God's ears, right? Let's hope that happens with the interest rates.
But like you think about this, the Feds have been really intentional to slow us down, to try to soak up some of this extra cash. The sun is going to shine again, and we're going to be different operators in 2024 to take advantage and grow through it.
What great perspective. Yes, I long for the days of put your foot on the gas and don't look back in the rearview mirror at all. Just keep going. What's going to be, as the sun peaks over the horizon and starts to shine and warm everyone's face in 2024, what does some of those shifts look like in your mind? Like maybe you could talk about it with your business and certainly in terms of some of the advice that you're giving to all of your clients.
Well, yeah. So like just personally for my business, and this might be true for you too, Jason, but like when things are easy, a lot of times that takes the form of there being more demand than I can possibly supply. And it gave me, as an operator, the excuse to be a little bit sloppy with how I addressed different parts of my business. And so now when we have the easy again, we're just going to have a much more effective machine for generating value. And I think Amazon sellers and the brands that I represent as CFO are the same way, where it's like, wow, we paid for every tool out there connected to Amazon. We paid for every employee in the world. We had inventory on every continent. And now we've realized, wait a second, what is my actual core mission for my business? And so I think the flip side of that now is the interest rates or whatever the market continues to get a little bit better is, guess what? We're going to start seeing people be able to exit again. We're going to see people be able to, they used to want to launch 10 new products a year, but they've had to ratchet it back to 5. They're going to be able to go back up to 6 or 7. And so I think it may not be all gas, but it's going to be more gas. And I think that's going to be more fun, frankly.
I love that, Tyler. Another friend of the show, Steve Simonson, when we started to see some trouble on the horizon in previous years, I asked him, what are you doing differently? And he's like, nothing. We're always trying to be a lean, mean fighting machine, right? But it's hard, right, Tyler? It's hard to have that kind of discipline, especially when times are good. But I think it's a good reminder. Now, Steve is like you, is a very successful entrepreneur and is insanely self-disciplined when it comes to his businesses. So I think he may be a little bit rare in the space, but it's kind of human nature for you to kind of let loose a little bit when things are going good. But it's a good reminder for us that we always should think about times as if trouble's on the horizon. Would you agree with that?
I really do. It's you kind of have to get punched in the face a little bit. I mean, I have to say I should at least make sure I have enough cash in the bank account just in case this one product launch doesn't go well. Like that wasn't even, and I'm not saying that
Yeah.
it's not that we're undisciplined, like maybe we are, like we could be more disciplined, but it's just that there was so
Yeah.
much evidence in the market that we were getting better multiples, we were getting better exits if we just were as aggressive as possible. And we
Yeah.
now have the infrastructure built to be smart aggressive instead of like
Yeah.
half-assed aggressive, right?
There's a nice segue that you put in there, as part of this sunrise coming back up again and feeling like almost like the animal spirits are a little bit better in 2024 and things are about to turn for the better. You mentioned that, exits are going to happen again. There was a peak, maybe a peak in 2021 from the outside looking in from my perspective. And then all of a sudden acquisitions fell off a cliff. Tyler, I talked to an aggregator recently. I sent a company to them that was looking for an exit. And he goes, we haven't made an acquisition in 2 years. I'm like, sheesh, but you guys are an acquisition company. What are you doing? And, they're trying to figure out their business model and figure out how to grow like a good seller was. But you have a really interesting lens and viewpoint for the M&A part of the business, because sometimes company needs to sell, they come to you, you clean up their books and get them ready, or you prepare someone from the start for that future exit. What are you seeing in the space right now, 2024? What are valuations looking like compared to what I call the aggregator gold rush, which is clearly over?
To define the gold rush quickly, between 2020 and the end of 2021, there were a little more than $13 billion of smart, quote unquote, money that came into the Amazon and direct to consumer space just to buy your business and my business. And so that's 2 years. And in the following 2 years, 2022 and 2023, $2 billion. In other words, it went from almost 14 billion to 2 billion like of new cash. And so what we saw was, by the way, the implications were huge for this, because now you can't buy at the same. You guys have been like this. I've been like this. Like I live in a town here in Athens, Georgia, where sometimes the market is such where it doesn't matter how ugly your house is. You put like a sign out there and you get 17 offers and everyone's bidding it up. And then you have some markets where it's like, no, the house can't be ugly. You got to have everything in ducks in a row. You're just not going to sell. And I think we saw that happen on the backside of that gold rush, where now acquisitions kind of screeched to a halt. To talk about multiples, we were regularly seeing 5x, 6x, sometimes even better multiples when the feeding frenzy was happening. And then over the last 2 years, well, first of all, just like you said, we're not hearing much at all from the aggregator population.
Yeah.
And those multiples that we did see are like ugly, like 1.5x, 2.5x, not 5x. And so to kind of take us into 2024, the excitement here is, I think we're starting to see glimmers of sunlight here. Newsflash, you're not going to get an 8x multiple anytime soon again in this market. However, you may get back to a normal 3.5, 4x if you're ready. And this is my gut. This is just instinct here, because I don't know, but I bet about a year from now, like this is a great year, 2024, to build the asset that's going to sell in Q1 of 2025 as the capital markets mature again and have more cash in the space.
Now, when you say multiples, are you talking about SDE, like seller's discretionary earnings, or what? Are you talking straight EBITDA? Unpack that metric a little bit for our listeners.
Yeah, so SDE is seller's discretionary earnings. For most brands that are like less than 8 figures in revenue, you're going to add back some of your personal expenses. Hey, you paid to go to a conference in Vegas or in Orlando or something like that. You're going to get credit. That's not going to count against your valuation.
You're paying for your car and gas, that sort of thing, right? Yeah, okay.
That's right. So for these sub $10 million brands, you're normally going through a process of converting your profit. Operating profit could be called EBITDA. You're converting it to SDE. If you're really, really large, you're still going to get add backs. But to be honest with you, there aren't a lot of like $40 million sellers out there that have meaningful add backs, because guess what? There's only so much you can spend on a car. I mean, like at some point, EBITDA is kind of the rule of thumb. But yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Once you get into that 8-figure range, Tyler, what does that multiple start to look like? I know that private equity groups talk about the rule of 40. You either have 30% growth and 10% EBITDA, or 40% EBITDA and 0% growth, or 40% growth and no EBITDA. What happens when you cross over into that 8-figure range? It's not easy to do, to get to that 8-figure range on an Amazon business, but what kind of magic happens once you reach that number?
It changes. It's funny. Nothing changes and everything changes, because the smart buyers out there, these private equity guys or these venture capital backed guys, they've gotten wise to the fact that it takes them the same amount of work to buy a $250,000 business as it does a $7.5 million business. And they were like, wait a second, but only for 5% more work, I could buy a $40 million business. And so what they've realized is that the return on their pain in the ass factor is much higher if you're a bigger business, right? Uh,
Right,
and also,
right.
big business tends to mean less risky. Like, you've figured some stuff out. And so, yeah, man. I mean, if you're going to be let's like, these are, I'm not giving real appraisals, but let's just say that $1 million seller could get a 3x multiple, and the same profitability in a $10 million seller would easily get a 5x multiple. You're just going to get a better multiple in your profit, because you've got a bigger pool of buyers with deeper pockets that care about you have already solved this problem. It's like that kind of thing.
That's very interesting. Speaking of, like, if you're a seller and you're sitting there in the $5 to $8 million range, certainly, like, if I'm presented with that option, Tyler. Now, this is just me personally, right? If I'm in the $5 to $7 million range and I know that multiple adds 2, if I get over that 8-figure number, I'm going to do that. But it's been challenging for folks to figure out the working capital. We talk about this slog over the last few years, right? There's been this inverse relationship between supply chain issues. They're starting finally to go down, but interest rates are accelerating. How do you get enough capital for growth in 2024 with interest rates being what they are? What have this increased interest rates meant in terms of working capital growth and cash flow? And how have you advised brands to sort of manage this game in its current state?
First thing is just to acknowledge it has been a lot harder, right? I mean, when that same influx of billions of dollars came into the space, some of the money went to buy businesses that were selling on Amazon and Shopify. And some of that money went to fund the inventory. There were a lot of these creative funding outfits that popped up. Some of them are still doing well. Some of them are gone. And just acknowledge to yourself, it is harder. It's 3 times as hard to raise $100,000 in capital now than it would have been 2 years ago. And that just needs to be part of my planning. Actually, this is how it's helped our clients. And this is where we're seeing a lot of them thrive right now, Jason, is we just have to do a real forecast now. And our real forecast has to answer the question, how much capital am I going to have available for growth this year? Like, I don't want to oversimplify this, but like, if your business generates $100K in like free cash flow, like you have an operating cash flow of $100K in a year, like, this is the way my mind works. If I have a certain amount of inventory and I want to grow my business, it's generally going to grow at the rate that I can grow my inventory. Like, that's kind of how it works. So for instance, if I only had $100K in inventory and you give me an additional $100K, I could double my business theoretically, because I have the cash to go from $100 to $200,000 in inventory. But a lot of times what sellers do is they're like, well, I'm going to go from 1 to 10. Well, where are you going to fund that? Well, I didn't make a lot of money last year, but I'm just going to get more loans. And so if that's your cash flow strategy, you're going to find it more challenging this year. You're going to have to try to fund differently than you would have 2 years ago.
It's so interesting too, with the new FBA fees that are going to roll out, I guess 3 different waves of changes in FBA fees in 2024. Talk about someone who's not simplifying things. And by the way, Tyler, I love that about you. You take these very complex concepts and dumb it down for guys like me. I really appreciate that. But there seems to be, like, Jassy's out there saying, turn your stuff faster. What about inventory turns? I mean, is that something where you can really stretch that dollar for growth? Is that something that you try to advise brands on a regular basis as well?
Yeah, totally. By the way, that's like rich coming from Jassy. So like, you and I and everyone listening to this rolls their eyes like, thanks a lot, Jassy. Like, raise our fees and then just say, hey guys, sell that quicker. Thanks a lot. It's really helpful. But like, he's right in the sense that like, we have got to find a way to have a single dollar in our business get used more than once a year. Like, right? That's the kind of the way you got to think about it. Every time I sell my inventory, every time I turn my inventory, I get to put that dollar back to work. I get to reinvest it. And so I think you and I talked about this in the last episode, but this baseball analogy, like profit is kind of like your batting average. But guess what? My inventory turns are the number of at bats I get per game. And I may strike out, but if you give me 10 at bats, I'm going to eventually get a base hit. I might even eventually get a home run. And so if I can do things to turn my inventory more quickly, and some of those practically might be literally something like calling my supplier and saying, hey, been a little more difficult. Can I have net 30 terms to pay you? Like if I could just push back my payments on those POs by a month, a month is 1/12 of a year. That is literally 1/12 of my working capital I'm getting back that I can redeploy. If I get rid of bad SKUs that aren't moving, if I start having the mindset, and you and I think, talked about this in the last episode, but like I can't just look at profit in a vacuum. I've got to look at profit plus the velocity of the cash that drives that profit. You might find some bad guys. You may find a couple of SKUs in your portfolio that are killing you, and you're going to choose to liquidate those and focus your resources on the good guys.
Yeah, and that pain of those SKUs that are killing you today is going to get a lot worse in the coming months if you're an FBA only seller, because they're going to punish you for stuff that's moving slowly as well. They don't want that. They don't want that clogging up the catalog anymore. So, and they don't want it to sit and collect dust in their warehouses. They're like a finely oiled machine. So I get it. It's painful. It's difficult. I always wish they would give more time and resources to help brands crack the code on what those fees are going to be. We're trying to do it ourselves for all our brands right now. And it ain't easy. And we know what we're doing, right? Great stuff. Tyler, that little discussion right there is absolute gold. That is the name of the game. What can kill your business more than anything? Lack of cash flow. And those little nuggets that you just dropped, and some of it I know we talked about in the previous episode, I don't think our listeners can hear it enough. Look at what that cash is left over. Figure out ways to stretch it more, turn stuff faster, ask for longer terms from your suppliers, but don't grow more than your capital can support. And if you can do that, and you do that projection that you're talking about, and you look and you realize I got a big delta to go from my $7.5 million company to 10 million right now. I can't fill it. Like if you tell me that as my CFO, Tyler, I'm like, okay, maybe now's not such a bad time to sell my business, right? Or I just stretch out my horizon, right? So, this is gold. I love having you on here, Tyler. Okay, so I know you got I think you told me one time that your pet KPIs. You've always got these, you're always very creative with this, which is I shouldn't say this. This is, pigeonholing the whole field of CFOs and accountants out there, but you're such an entrepreneurial CFO. I'm dying to hear what sort of new metrics, or what you, as you say, your pet metrics you're looking at in 2024 that have really helped do the things that we just talked about that we want brands to be doing, right? So what are you looking at in 2024, Tyler?
So I brought two. One is an old but crucial metric, and then we'll talk about a new one. The first one is called PAG, P-A-G. That stands for Post Advertising Gross Profit. And what I really mean by that, guys, is there are a lot of dudes with accounting backgrounds like me that have degrees from universities that say, you can't put your Amazon fees above the line. That would be wrong. Or you can't put your advertising above the line. And I would just say, guys, that's like, I'm sorry, we have to know our true contribution margin after Amazon fees and after our advertising. And I would even say after direct storage fees. And the reason for this is Amazon gives us such rich data that Jason's team can pretty much tell you which dollar went to sell which unit. Like, that's how granular we can get with this. And so why would we not hold each ASIN accountable to true profitability after our landed cost of goods sold, after the Amazon fees, and after the advertising? And so PAG, if you don't know, like you and I go to conferences a lot, Jason, and people love to talk about revenue because they know that number. They got the 1099K from Amazon. They got a rough idea of what it is. What they don't understand is what their true margins are. And so I just want to encourage you guys, as you go into 2024, have a mechanism to understand your portfolio's margins, and have and that's probably, by the way, that's called bookkeeping. You want to have good bookkeeping that shows you what your actual gross profit is. And it can't lie to you. It needs to be so accurate that when it's bad, it means you need to change something. And then in addition to that, have some mechanism, some dashboard. Jason, I know you guys have great technology to understand that on an ASIN by ASIN level. Again, I've never met a client, and you haven't either, Jason, that doesn't have at least one ASIN that's killing them. They just didn't know it. But you dig in there and you're like, wait a minute, why are you only charging $7 for this product that has $4 in Amazon fees? What are we doing here? And so PAG is the first KPI I want to bring to your attention today.
Oh my God, I love that. I love that. And yes, I have had those exact discussions with accountants not named Tyler Jefcoat. You can't put your marketing up there, but what a great metric to focus on. I couldn't agree more. And, from my perspective, I've seen both extremes of that PAG number too, Tyler. For example, I'll give you another example. So someone is looking at their per ASIN profitability and they're like, I'm cutting that thing, right? It's gone, right? But I look at it and I'm saying, damn, that thing's ranked like 120 right now. Oh, and by the way, you were out of stock 150 days out of the last year. How about we put that thing back in stock, raise the rank and increase the price and make it profitable? So sometimes I see folks, which is better than not doing it, right? It's better than doing nothing with the product that's not winning. But I think that there are other steps that, certainly a good marketing agency or smart seller can look at. There are levers that can be pulled to give it one more shot before you cut it. But you don't know that you have to pull those levers if you can't see it. So I love PAG, Tyler. What's the next one you got on your list?
Well, just to affirm you there, one of my friends always says, keep, cuddle, or kill. Don't skip the cuddle stage. If you have something that's got some flags, the purpose of having the data is to force us to ask questions. And you just talked about, there are a lot of things about a particular product that could be going wrong that are fixable. Is there something wrong with the listing? Is our content missing the mark? Did Amazon put us in the wrong category algorithmically like they always do? What is it that happened that might be harming it? And I don't want to let my investment go in this product and just liquidate it until I've exhausted a few options for rehabbing it or cuddling it. And then eventually I'm going to have to stop treating it like my baby and I'm going to have to let it go, but not before I've done a process. So it's almost like, I hate to say, it's like an employee. You're not going to just can an employee. You're going to put them on probation. You're going to work with them. You're going to try to nurture them back to health. And then if they don't want to get better, we get it. This isn't the right fit. Seller account's not going to work for you. Avenue 7 is not going to work for you. And it's got to be the same way with your products.
Keep, cuddle, or kill. I'm going to use it, Tyler. Is that okay? I love that phrase. That's exactly how these sellers. Thank you, John. Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks,
I'm
John.
all over that. That's the way we're going to look at it.
Jason's going to be on a client call tomorrow and he's going to be like, I want to talk to you about cuddling this product here that we have.
That is a fact. I'm using it as early as Monday. Yeah.
All right. So second KPI, this is what happens, by the way, when you have an accountant invent KPIs that become really weird out, whatever, letters and stuff. So CAL, C-A-L. Listen, if I'm trying to get healthier, I'm going to eat a little lower CAL. I want my CAL to be under control. And what CAL stands for is COGS plus ads load. If I could sum up my landed cost of goods sold plus my total advertising budget, that tacos budget, that load is an important controllable metric. I can't control Amazon fees normally. Every once in a while I can re-engineer my products, but normally I can't. And Bezos and Jaffe and those guys are going to get their 15%, and they're normally going to get the 20% FBA fee. What I can control is dusting off the passport, drinking sake, kissing babies, hanging out with my suppliers. And I can control keeping a focus on my AdWords and negative keywords and my marketing efforts. And if I'm not good at that, I need an agency like Avenue 7 to do it for me who are good at that. And so the added total of those two percentages. I'll give you a case study. If we have a client who has cost of goods sold that are amazing, they have 20% of their total sales are COGS, just the product. That's a really good margin. When that product is being sold, Jason's team may need a 20% tacos budget to get that product to grow. And you're going to be thrilled to give it to him because the CAL, the total of those two is still only 40%, which is a scalable, healthy CAL. On the flip side, if you have a product where 40% of your retail price is just the landed cost of goods sold, you're going to have that same discussion with your ad team, and you're going to have to say, Jason, I'm not sure what to do about this one, but the ad budget is 2.5%. Our tacos can't exceed 2.5%, or we're going to be in trouble trying to scale this product. And the point of having a metric like CAL is, guys, Jason and I get the same question every day. What can my tacos budget be? What should the budget be? What should the budget be? And if you divorce that discussion from your core product margins, you're always going to set yourself and your marketing team up for failure. You've got to understand how much juice is allowed, because I want to advertise. Like, you give me a product with premium margins and I want to outspend my competitors to get that ranking in that real estate. Give me a product that isn't differentiated, that has low margins. I'm sorry, we got a commodity product. We need to be a little bit more disciplined with our ads.
Yeah, and you really got to rethink your product, right? I mean, that's a really important avenue at 7 Avenues, is the product avenue. And what a great discussion there. That PAG is really, really important. And what I find, which is interesting, I didn't really understand this until I joined the agency business, Tyler, because we sold pool tables and ping pong tables, and it wasn't like you could subscribe and save them, right? You bought one of them and then that was it. And so, what we see, especially if, and I used to joke with my brothers, like, if we'd started in 2003 selling deodorant sticks, we'd be billionaires by now. Now, I'm sure that's an exaggeration, but the repeat business model, a product where you can either subscribe and save, or folks reorder it, like a shampoo and those CPG type things, they can certainly support that higher tacos number, 20, 30, sometimes 40, if the repeat business on the back end, where people aren't clicking on an ad, is very, very strong. And like pool tables, man, we had that low tacos. We couldn't go higher because we needed to make money on every pool table, because that customer wasn't going to buy another one for like 7 years or 10 years. Right. So what a great discussion. And frankly, Tyler, I learned that the hard way in my first 3 months of running the agency. I was like, oh, there's this interesting business model where you can have a repeat customer, buying your stuff every month. What? I had been doing this game the wrong way. Great discussion. So I want to introduce another pressure on tacos that's coming. I'm actually very excited about it, Tyler. And that is the ability to do connected TV ads through Prime Video. And on January 29th, Amazon is going to start inserting essentially TV commercials inside of their Prime Video app. They're already in Freebie. I am really excited about this for the following reason. You used to have to go outside of Amazon and do other things outside of Amazon's walled garden in order to raise awareness for your brand and gain that mind share that's required to really have accelerated growth. But now, with CTV, with OLV via DSP, you can run a TV commercial to a targeted audience. And then after it runs and they viewed it, you can retarget them for 3 months to bring them back, right? And so there's a lot of magic that I'm really excited about as an agency owner when it comes to CTV and DSP. But Tyler, the game is going to change a little bit. What kind of advice are you giving to your brands and how to think about DSP from a profit margin perspective, especially in light of what we just discussed?
I think for me, first of all, that is exciting. You and I, finally they're going to release the next season of Ring of Power here in the summer, and you and I are going to be watching it, and all of a sudden there's going to be an ad that's going to pop up for whatever show. Yeah, but guys.
Oh, by the way, I'm paying for the extra. I'm not going to do ads. I'm going to pay for the extra.
Oh, there we go. I didn't know I was going to be paying the extra, but now that I know these ads are coming, I'm going to be paying the extra as well. So yeah, that'll be interesting. But guys, here's the way my mindset works. I got this from Eric Ries, wrote a book, The Lean Startup, and then his follow-up was called The Leader's Guide. And in the Leader's Guide, he says, you've got to spend 75-ish% of your marketing budget on what he calls the golden goose. This is the thing that has generated this is what keeps the lights on. This is what pays the mortgage. This is what keeps mama happy. This is what we got. This is what has worked in the past. And for most Amazon sellers, that's going to be, keyword related pay-per-click ads on Amazon. But he says you got to spend a portion of your budget, maybe it's 15%, on growing new marketing channels, because you don't know. Like, Amazon has a nasty habit of sometimes having things not work, and that makes us scared. But guess what? 7 years ago, Amazon had a nasty habit of launching ads, and in the early adopters of those ads became millionaires overnight.
Yeah, right.
And so,
and the original iterations of those ads were bad, but they made them better quickly and over time. Exactly.
So I'm a big fan of having whatever my ad budget is for the year. Again, I'm determining my total ad budget based on the profit margin of the particular product. If I have better margins, I got more juice that I can afford to have Jason and the team spend on my behalf to try to get the product to move. And I'm a big fan of taking a small percentage of that juice and putting it into something that I'm trying that I'm pretty sure that's going to win. And then I'm going to take an even tinier percentage of that juice and try something wild and radical. That might be the TikTok kind of play. That might be something else. Like if it were me, if you gave me a dream scenario and I had 100% of my ad budget, probably 75 to 80% goes to the normal PPC. Probably 15% goes to something like DSP or other like Google ads, things that we know work. They just are a bit of a long shot or up funnel, top funnel. And then that final 5%, baby, give me something wild. Give me an influencer. Give me something that I don't know if it's going to work, but if it does work, gives me a 10x result over my competitors.
I've worked with a lot of CFOs in my last 22 years, Tyler, and I don't know that there's a lot of CFOs that get that quite like you do. Like you've got to bring people to your brand. It's not like what's the Kevin Costner, the baseball movie? If you build it, they will come. You've got to get that thing in front of eyeballs of people who have interest. And I'm really excited about it. I love how you broke that out. It makes perfect sense. And certainly I love that you mentioned TikTok as well, because certainly, we've got several billion-dollar brands. They've got big budget. They've got, really great margins because they've built up that brand trust. And by the way, their margins are higher because of that trust that they've built out. CTV is a no-brainer for them. Some that are in that 7-8 figure, high sevens, low 8 figure. It's a really great opportunity to go past that inflection point where they're at and hit that next elevated stage. But a smaller brand, it's really hard for them to move into CTV right now. Now, I know Amazon's got sponsored TV. I don't know that unless you can do it consistently and do a really good job remarketing, it's less effective than the big spenders with DSP. But TikTok is a great way. Like, I love that influencer idea, and TikTok is loaded with influencers that could do user generated content and get a lot of, you could get a shot at going viral, like the dang Stanley Cup, the Stanley Cup did. I remember my daughter came home and said, "Oh, I got this I want a Stanley Cup for Christmas." I'm like, "I'm sorry, did you say Stanley?" My grandfather had a metal lunch pail that was Stanley branded. She goes, "Oh yeah, it's like the hottest thing." It got re-engaged by TikTok, right? So I'm actually contradicting myself because that's a very big brand, but TikTok and the CTV can work together. And I just love, Tyler, that you get that as a, I know you're entrepreneurial, probably more than you are a CFO at this point, but I love that.
Well, and just to I don't even know that you contradicted yourself, because I think part of this is it's like any other investment. Like the greater a percentage of my total net worth an investment is, like if I have a net worth of $1 million and I'm trying to buy an asset that costs me $1 million, that needs to be a surefire bet. That needs to be a high expected, almost guaranteed ROI, because I'm betting the farm. I'm betting my entire net worth on it. But for Stanley, which is a legacy 9-figure plus brand, guess what? I wonder what they spent on that TikTok campaign. I bet they spent something. I bet they were intentional. Yeah, but for them, it might have been a couple $100,000 for them. That's nothing. That's a rounding error. This is
it's like a rounding error for them, right?
And so, like, if you're thinking about these more experimental investments, whatever, like in your life, it might be something like crypto, but like in your Amazon business, the experimental ones just need to be a smaller percentage. Because guess what? We're not betting the farm on this. We're Stanley. Well, now listen, Stanley's got a 6-figure rounding error. You and I, we don't. Ours needs to be like 5K. That's our rounding error. Like that's all we get.
Right. Well said, Tyler. Well said. We really unpacked this on the last time you were on day 2, Tyler. And I still, even today, I hear the following statement a lot, whether it's somebody who's already on Amazon, who's multi-channel, or someone who's on other channels and thinking about coming on to Amazon. And I know we talked about it in the previous episode. And by the way, I really encourage you all to go back and listen to that other episode with Tyler as well. But I think it bears repeating, and it's worth repeating. The statement that I hear a lot, I don't or can't make as much money on Amazon as I can on my DTC or my other sales channels. And I know that there's some truth in there, Tyler, but I think of anyone in our space, I feel like you've nailed this. So Tell us what your perspective is when you hear that from the brands you work with, and what do you share with them?
So the truth is this: if you have a reliable funnel for generating traffic and conversions on your Shopify site, you are avoiding Amazon fees. And we're not great at math, but we know that's going to increase your margins. We get that. That's a valid point that you're making. But two things are true. One is most brands out there don't have a reliable funnel that doesn't cost an outrageous overall ad budget. And so Amazon, we can love to hate them, but guess what? They're still getting us like 3 times or 4 times the effectiveness for every dollar invested in ads because they already have the buying power. People are bottom of funnel and they're pulling the trigger. So that's the first point. If you have an outrageously effective influencer or social media or meta ads or Google ads funnel, congratulations, keep milking that. But even if you're that guy, this is my second point really quickly. If you're that guy with a brand that has that kind of clout, like if you think about like a brand like Stanley, if Stanley was not selling their products on Amazon, guess what? 500 hack sellers would be selling them on Amazon tomorrow because the opportunity is so big there, and they're going to destroy the essence of your brand by having crappy listings and crappy support. And so for bigger brands that have cracked the code of having a wholesale business or a direct consumer business, they still need to be an adult about Amazon and put some investment into owning that real estate, protecting their brand essence, and frankly, still capturing a good profit margin on Amazon.
Well said. That cost of acquisition, and I think there's all those very famous DTC companies that launched over the last decade and a half. What a lot of people don't understand is they had money trees. They had raised hundreds of millions of dollars from VC companies, and they were burning cash that the average entrepreneur just can't burn. It's amazing now in the rearview mirror, looking back at some of those companies. Some of them still don't make any money, right? But they're able to do that because they've got this enormous pile of invested cash. And so I love what you said there. Sort of the other piece, the cost of acquisition. Totally getting that. You've got to be there, especially if you're a bigger brand, to defend your ground so that you don't lose that brand equity that they've spent decades building, that brand trust and that mind share. What about FBA fees and storage fees? I think this is also a mistake that brands make. They've got a warehouse. They think it's a sunk cost. They've got people picking, packing, shipping out of their warehouse. That cost is below the line on an order basis, on an item basis, but in Amazon, it's above the line. How do you reconcile that? And what do you recommend to brands who maybe aren't calculating what that pick, pack, storage cost per unit is for their DTC business?
Yeah, it's harder to calculate your true margins, especially like if you take that a step further and you're doing like some of the manufacturing, you're finishing your products. So now you got to pay rent on a warehouse. You've got people you're paying. You're paying those people when they are idle. You're paying them when they're sick and they're at home or they, she's on maternity leave. Like that's okay. That's a business. That's what happens. And so the question that you have to ask yourself is, am I enough better at this function than Amazon that I can be superior? And the answer is almost 100% no. Like with almost every case study we've looked at, Jason, there's a reason that Amazon's billions of dollars in investment in robotics and security and like automated carts that move stuff within the FCs and the absolute sheer scale. There's a reason that Amazon has a moat that you and I are unlikely to supplant anytime soon. They're really, really good at logistics. And so if I have a special case where I have to rekit a product or where I am actually finishing the manufacturing and that's how I grab my margin, cool. But for most, this is like any business. Like it's like, Jason, you and I talk really well because I'm not a marketing expert. I need guys like you in my life that get that side of it. I'm kind of the accounting finance guy. What I've learned, this is just me. This is my my philosophy in life. There are riches and niches. If I can find just a few things to be spectacularly great at and be good enough at managing the things around me to outsource other things or find partners, then I'm going to make more money. I'm going to be happier. I'm going to stay married. Everything in my life gets better if I don't have to do everything 100%, if I can have trusted partners. And so honestly, Amazon's probably better than you are, and you are probably hiding some of those expenses lower in your P&L. And just make sure you count them, because guess what? You may not have a choice. It's okay. Just make sure you know what those margins are so that you can build your brand strategy accordingly.
Tyler, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. You are so insightful. And, most entrepreneurs, we're crazy. We're a crazy bunch, and we're not really great at accounting and CFO stuff, but it's really critical to us surviving and enjoying this lifestyle that we all have. And I just really appreciate you coming on the show. You're so great at breaking it down, breaking these very complicated financial models and thoughts and processes down so that the average bear like me can understand it. So I can't thank you enough for what you do for the seller community, for brands, and for our space, Tyler. And it's always a pleasure. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, man. It's really been great to be here.
In the final analysis, if you're unclear about your profitability or cash flow in times of higher capital costs, do yourself a favor. Contact Tyler's team at selleraccountant.com. That's selleraccountant.com. You can trust that Tyler will give you the truth, even if you don't want to hear it, and that he knows these numbers better than anyone in the space. And don't forget to calculate your PAG and your CAL. Lower those calories in 2024. So again, thanks again, Tyler. Really appreciate it. If you're ready to start growing and protecting your brand on Amazon with a team of experienced Amazon operators, you can visit us at day2podcast.com. That's day2podcast.com. And lastly, if you know of anyone else who would benefit from this podcast, please share it with them. Thanks for listening, and happy selling.